Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's Kai and today I have a nail art tutorial for this K-pop inspired cyberpunk Y2K set. It is based off of Aespa's Armageddon music video. This is not a new release, but it is something that I really love the aesthetic from, and I've always been wanting to make a set inspired by it. I recently picked up some materials that I felt were perfect for doing this design, and so I thought, why not give it a go? I often do pretty cutesy designs on my channel. I feel like I have three aesthetics: cutesy, elegant, and dark. I do really like gothic styles. It's not something that I do often, and so I wanted to do more of a darker themed nail set. And of course, I love 3D nail art, and so there are a couple new techniques and designs that I wanted to try and take inspiration from. So if that sounds good to you, please consider liking and subscribing, and without too much more chit chat, let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so this is my most recent design. It was largely inspired by Aespa's Armageddon. That music video came out sometime last year. It might have been almost a whole year ago at this point, but I really like the aesthetic of it. It features like fairies and mermaids, but in a very cyberpunk Y2K sort of way, with all of these like visual effects surrounding water and metallics. These here are two screen grabs directly from the music video, and so I wanted to kind of recreate that same aesthetic. I also had recently picked up this here. It is the Aprés Silk cover collection, and I was looking into what I could do with it, and I thought I could do maybe like some 3D metallic elements with it. So my plan is this here. I also wanted to do some pierced nails. So this here is my plan. I want the thumbnail to have like a blended black aura, and then on top I was thinking of doing a mermaid skeleton. So doing like the mermaid tail, but with the bones showing, maybe a white or clear tail with some of the metallic paint on there. The pointer and pinky finger are just kind of like filler designs with that sort of like scale look that you get when you add blooming gel, and then top it off with little dots of paint. So I want to do that with black, and then over the top do some chrome patterns. Middle finger I want to be a jelly black with these transparent wings. I'm thinking I'll use the new clear Cris Clay. I've used it a little bit, but I like to try it out more, see what I can do with it. And those I want to be kind of reminiscent of these wings here. Another shot pulled directly from the music video. And then the ring finger is going to be this like skeletal design with a marble background. I'm really feeling inspired by these two sets here from Diablo Nails on Instagram. She is an amazing nail artist, and I really like this nail here. I want to see if I can recreate something somewhat similar, not exactly, but we'll see, because it is quite the complex 3D design. But I love like the cyberpunk pierced look she's got going on there. And then same with these claw nails that she did with like the bones. I really like that look. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking of creating. I also have this mermaid tail nail mold here that I haven't used yet. I think I showed it in a recent haul. I will try to link the haul that it's from if you're interested in seeing what I picked up from AliExpress. But I thought I would show you guys how to do 3D nail molds as well. Just a short introduction. I do plan on doing like a full 3D nail mold video eventually on my channel, but we'll see when I get there. So yeah, this is the design, very much like dark fairy mixed with cyberpunk with all the metallics. And of course some 3D elements, so I am excited to see how it turns out. Okay, so for the materials that I use, a lot of them are going to be black or clear. Starting off with a base gel, this is just to create a smooth surface. Then you do need some sort of matte top coat. I'm using the Yogurt Gel Korea brand. You'll need a glossy top coat, opt for a thinner one. You will want a jelly white, kind of like a milky white, and an opaque black. So these are both from Divock, Vanta White, and Milkus. And then you'll need a jelly black color as well. I'm trying a new brand here. It's called Rah Rah from Junie. That is Susie XX's brand. She's a big Instagram nail artist. To add a bit of sparkle, I'm using an Aurora Queen gel. This is a magnetic silver gel from the Moonlight collection. And then you will need a blooming gel. I'm now realizing that I only have this Beetles brand, so if you have a recommended blooming gel, let me know. For the 3D elements, I'll be using Chrisania's white clay. This is a go-to of mine for really detailed sculptures or 3D nail art. And then I'll also be using her brand new clear clay. It's supposed to be less sticky than other brands and super, super clear. For the metallic elements, I'll be using the heavy metal gel from Ice Gel. This is a really nice thick consistency chrome painting gel that's super shiny. And you'll need a black painting gel, so I'm turning to my D-Gel, my black liner. And I have absolutely been loving this stuff lately. It's the Divock Canvas Gel in white. You can actually get a whole tub of it, which I need to do, because as you can see, my tube is almost out. And last but not least, here is the Aprés Silk cover in the color Silver Screen. It's a really interesting nail polish. It's not a gel, so we'll see how it works. And then for charms, you will need some piercings and some studs. Doing this voiceover after the design is finished, I will say the studs are probably optional. And then I will be using a 3D nail mold for the mermaid tail. I will link this one specifically if I can find it again in the description down below. You could hand sculpt this, I just won't be showing you how to in this video. And for tools, you will need some basics. Start with a spatula for scooping out the 3D clays. You'll want some sort of round oval brush to manipulate the clays with, as well as a liner for doing all sorts of details on the set. And last but not least, I can't remember what brand this is. It's not on the packaging, but it's just a small detailer brush that I use for modeling the clays. And I will be also trying out for the first time this new Melody Susie dust collector that they so kindly sent over to me. So it is gifted, but I wasn't paid anything to make this review. It comes with your standard power cable that plugs into the wall. If you have any sort of other dust collectors or nail drills, you probably already have one of these, honestly. And then the dust collector itself, the reason I accepted the PR was because look at this design. I love the cover, the filter cover. I think it's so classy looking. It does come with Melody Susie's classic reusable filter. They've upgraded the outside for touch-activated power buttons instead of regular buttons. And the biggest draw for me is just how thin this is. So I'm really excited to give it a try in this video. Okay, we are finally at the end of the supply list. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the nail art tutorial. Alright, to start off with the base colors, I'm beginning with pre-prepped tips. These are the Dayami corn tips that I've already sized out, and I'll be doing my normal process of priming them with the Aprés tip primer. Now, even though this is convenient, it does contain HEMA, so I do recommend that you wear gloves when using it. Speaking of which, please make sure that you are doing your research. If you are going to do gel nails at home, look into the products you're using, the process of gel nails, and just make sure that you're being safe so you can continue to enjoy the experience allergy-free. My biggest advice is whenever possible, wear gloves, avoid contact with uncured gel, and clean your skin thoroughly with a gel cleanser if you do happen to get it on your skin. Okay, so now that that disclaimer is out of the way, I am just really prepping these tips well, making sure that there's no sort of smooth surface left after applying the primer. I do like this method just because I feel like it's less messy than if I were to file down the nail surface. It's also, I feel like, easier on my wrists than having to file and buff the nail surface of every nail. This is just a lot quicker for me. By the way, sorry if my voice sounds a little bit weird. I'm still getting over a cold that I had last week. Unfortunately, we're going on week 2 now, but I'm starting to feel pretty close to normal. All right, so once I had my tips prepped, I wanted to go in and do the aura nail for the thumb finger first. And I had an idea of using the D-gel painting gels to see if I could get a good pigmented ombre. I've been seeing a bunch of advertisements for like ombre gels, and they really honestly seem a lot like thicker painting gels. I think perhaps it's the sponge that matters a little bit more, because even with these pigmented gels here, the sponge unfortunately that I have is too sparse, so you still get kind of like that textured appearance. I also think that I went in over the prepped nail without any sort of smooth base, and so I ended up wiping it all off, starting over by first base coating the nails. I'm using the Maya long base, and you don't necessarily have to base coat your press-ons. I personally like to, just because I do really like that smooth surface to work on, especially if I'm using like a jelly polish. If you paint a jelly polish onto an uneven surface, there's more of a chance that the color will cling to an area, and then you'll get an uneven layer with potentially uneven color payoff as well. So I just base coated all of them and put them in the lamp for 60 seconds. Then I went in with my Divock Vanta Black. This is a looser gel, so I was hoping that that smoother consistency would lead to a better aura effect with the sponge, but unfortunately there was still a lot of texture. It was slightly better though when I went in and kind of like cleaned up around the edges with the clean parts of the sponge. I really do think that your sponge quality is going to be one of the biggest factors when doing this technique, so I will be investing in some expensive Korean sponges and seeing if they really do make a difference. These ones I just got off of AliExpress, I think for like a couple dollars for 100 of them, so they're not the highest quality. Anyway, I made do with what I had, and I repeated this blending process in layers. So I laid down the first layer, blurred out those edges with the clean part of the sponge, and then I cured it for 30 seconds before going in with another layer. Same process, just in a smaller area, concentrating more in the center of the nail. This did take about 6 layers, I will say. But while you're watching me create that aura, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the inspo behind this. So I know I mentioned it was the Armageddon music video. It was also my love of like fairy tale folklore. I'd always loved everything magic since I was a really young girl, and then when I got a little bit older, I fell down the deep rabbit hole that was like young adult fairy romance stories. My favorites being the Ironside series from Holly Black, and also Melissa Marr's Wicked Lovely series. They very much featured more like traditional Celtic fairy lore though, where the fairies are not always like nice like Tinkerbell and Disney. I honestly learned so much about like real Celtic fairy lore from those books. It was kind of crazy how different it is from your common like Disney-fied fairies. No, often fairies were like very dangerous and mischievous. They would lure people to their deaths. They would mess with humans just for fun. It's kind of like the Brothers Grimm version of your common Disney princess stories. But yeah, the set does bring back some fond memories from my teenage years of just having the time to enjoy reading for fun and reading like a good, entertaining book. And I feel like that genre of books is kind of coming back in a way. I know I've seen a lot about that one series all over TikTok, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of explore those darker aesthetics when it comes to all things magical with this set. So we were finally on at the last layer for this ombre. I do believe I did 5. I think that's where I stopped. So I put that in for a final cure, and then I went on to the pointer finger. So for this finger, I'll be doing a common blooming gel technique. So you put on a layer of the blooming gel. Honestly, I have done this with base coat, even top coat, but the blooming gel just does help with dispersion a little bit. And then you add little dots of polish in a line, and they spread out and begin looking almost like scales of some sort, like snake skin. In case it wasn't clear, you just want to make sure that you're doing this while the blooming gel is still wet. So you do not cure the blooming gel before you add the little dots of polish. And as you can see, it just helps it spread out into that really cool pattern. I didn't love the pattern I made initially though, so I did wipe it all off and start over. Despite drawing out the design before, the set did feature a lot of trial and error just because I was working with some products that I hadn't worked with before. So this time I'm starting with the dots in the center of the nail and moving outward. That way I can control the curve a little bit better and have that line go right where I want it to. Once you're happy with the spread, cure it for a full 60 seconds. And now we are on to the middle finger, and this is my first time really using the Rara brand. It is quite a thick brand of polish, which honestly for jelly polishes is nice because then you can get a really even layer. The handles are interesting. They're quite ergonomic actually, like they feel decent to hold because they are quite substantial. So I'm just layering this on in pretty thin layers, that way I can get nice even color payoff. They seem to self-level really beautifully. Granted, this is the first color I've tried, so I can't say much about other colors, but I feel like this jelly black is gorgeous. It's very much like a blue black, so it has a cooler tone base, and this brand actually is stocked by Junie, which is an online Korean Japanese gel retailer that is, I believe, partially owned at least by Susie XX on Instagram. So I believe I ended up doing, I think, 5 coats in total of this polish because I was making them really thin to try to get perfectly even coverage. Honestly, I think 5 coats was way too far. I definitely could have stopped at like 3 for the look I was going for. I don't know, for some reason in the moment I was thinking that I wanted it more of a pigmented black, but with the final design, I would probably recommend you leave more transparency than I did and opt for just a couple coats of your black jelly polish. I don't know if it's still available, but Born Pretty actually had a black jelly base gel that would be a good dupe for this. Anyway, I'm just wiping off the tacky layer before adding a little bit of sparkle with the Aurora Queen magnetic gel. This is number 218 from the Moonlight collection. I did a full review of this collection on my channel, and I'll try to put the video up in the corner. But it is a really pretty set of silver magnetic gels. I'm just kind of like haphazardly painting this on the tip. I just wanted a subtle shine for the underside of this 3D design. I magnetized around the edge and then used a bar magnet to create kind of like that French look, but on a slant. And then once I was happy, I gave it a full cure. And then I knew I was going to be going in with my 3D elements next for this nail, so I had to go ahead and top coat it. Up next is the ring finger, which I'll use the blooming gel on again. So I'm laying down a nice thin layer, and then before curing, I'm taking a liner brush and I'm dipping that in that Divock Vanta Black, and I'm just adding little streaks in that uncured blooming gel. I'm centering them around a diagonal line, but then just kind of like dragging the color from the top and bottom end towards the middle, concentrating most of it on that top and bottom end. You don't want to overwork this too much to where the color becomes really muddy, just enough to where it disperses a little bit and you get that kind of smoke-like marbled appearance. Once I was happy with the amount of gel I had on there, I did go ahead and cure it. Which brings us finally to the pinky nail, again going in with that blooming gel because I'll be doing the same design that I did on the pointer finger. One thing I wanted to show is how to get a thin layer. Hold your brush more perpendicular to the nail like this. That will actually wipe away some of the extra product as you're painting, whereas if you hold it like this, where it's more parallel to the nail, it will give you a nice, even, smooth coat, but often lay down more product. So once I'm done painting on that blooming gel, and then it's the same process as before, just dotting on that black Vanta polish, and then curing once you're happy with the spread. Okay, so that is the base colors finished, and now for my favorite part, adding the 3D nail art. We're gonna start with the nail mold. So I got this one off of, I believe it was AliExpress, either that or Temu, but either way, I will try to leave the link down below. And we'll be focusing on the largest mermaid tail in this set. I will be making the charm out of the Divock Milkus white syrup gel. I wanted a white base, but because you layer in the polish quite thickly when you do these sorts of charms, I also wanted some clarity so it would fully cure. So I'm just going in with the liner brush and making sure to apply a thin-ish layer to the entirety of the design. I was not going to be using the tail, so I am just doing the fins portion. And again, you really want to get into each of the grooves and gaps and really make sure that it is fully coated. Because of the surface tension, your polish should stick even though this is one of those curved designs. So you just paint in that initial layer, cure it, and then go in with a second layer to fully fill the design. Just make sure that you're really pushing that brush into those gaps for the first layer. That way you avoid any air bubbles. You can worry about actually smoothing out the back of the charm with your second layer, adding extra product, but that first layer is where you want to focus on making sure that you have some gel covering the surface of the design everywhere. And then once you fully cure the second layer, you can just pop it out. This is just one method for working with 3D nail art molds. I will try to do a longer, more dedicated video to those in the future, but for now we have our lovely mermaid tail. And now it's time for a hand sculpted art. So I will be using my Cressandinary Cris Clay in art, and it is a true clay texture. You do need something like this for this design, something that will hold its shape. And I'm starting by making really thin little, almost petal-like shapes. I was molding it on my little disposable palette, but I should have laid down just a little bit of isopropyl alcohol because it stuck some. So I switched to molding on my glove, and I just flattened out again that petal shape, and I wanted to make some additional fin layers. And so I go in, this is just like some sort of cuticle tool that I got off of Amazon, and I add the ridges, and then I peel that up from my finger, and it actually kind of made it nicely curved. It was, however, just a little bit too big, and so I cut it in half and then took each half and just sort of nicely shaped them into additional fin shapes. I'm not sure exactly how helpful this part of the tutorial is going to be because I was doing a lot of experimenting, a lot of things that I hadn't done before. I have since learned some things, and honestly, I would probably use more alcohol during this process to really get nice, smooth, flat shapes that wouldn't stick to anything, although they did pretty easily come up off of my glove, as you can see here. But yeah, I like this product because you couldn't do that kind of detailed work with a clay that self-levels. You want something stiff like this. I do have a code with Cressania. It is Get Pressed for 10% off, but I purchased all of these on my own. So after making those additional fin parts and curing them fully, I'm gluing down the mermaid tail. I am using the IV Fix gel in the tube. I've mentioned this before, but just in case you're watching, I do really like the product in the jar. I unfortunately can't recommend the tube right now because it is so messy, it leaks into the cap, so I'm hoping some future iterations fix that because it is such a nice, fine applicator. And I'm just flash curing that in place. The nice thing about that mold is it is curved, so it fits the nail really well. And now I'm going in around the base of the tail and I'm adding some more glue before securing each of the little extra fins in place. I really like how this turned out. It was based on that inspo picture from, I think it's Annie's dolls on my inspo board. I just really love the look of almost petal-like glowy mermaid tails. And here I felt like one of the fins was still a little bit too big, so I actually just trimmed it down with an extra pair of cuticle nippers that I use for removing charms and things like that. Because the Cris Clay cures down hard, it is easy to kind of like either file or trim away extra bits. And then I am just flash curing those into place as well before giving the whole nail a full cure. And to take this design from cutesy, elegant, magical to creepy, I'm going to be painting on some fish bones with that Divock white canvas gel. I have been using this stuff so much as of late. If you haven't noticed from some of my past designs, I just love texture on nails, and it's a really great way to create some extra texture, some raised portions on a nail. So I start by laying down the parts where the fish bones connect to Is it a spine? I guess it would be spine, right? The elongated spine. And then separately, I go in and paint the little, I don't even know what you call this, like the tines? Let me see if I can look it up. Okay, yeah, so it's just an elongated spine. So I'm painting on the spine, and then the center connective portion is the vertebrae. I guess it's not really every day that I'm thinking about the fish skeletal system, but hey, it's always good to learn something new. Now, I'm not applying too much product yet because I do want a nice clean shape, but then I do go back over that design once I fully cure it and add some volume. So here I'm just going over each vertebrae and kind of like lumping the product on and pulling away so it creates a pointed tip. You can kind of see it there, profile view. And then the same with the actual spine. I am adding more product towards the center, making it skinnier towards the edges, just so you get that nice raised effect. And this probably has to be my favorite nail of the whole design. I really love how it looks both so elegant and magical, but also those bones I think came out really nicely. And onto the middle finger, I am going to be using the new Chris clay in clear. So this is a slightly different texture than her other clays. It's not a clay consistency. It is more of like a bouncy, rubbery texture, similar to, I would say, the Vala Toy Gel, but look at how clear that is. That is crazy. It was reflecting the lights in my studio so well just because of the clarity. Now, the final product, you'll notice, has some bubbles, and that's because I was manipulating it quite a bit here into a wing shape. But if you don't plan on manipulating it much, it's going to stay really, really nice and clear. So I'm taking a larger silicone tool and I am just flattening it out into the general wing shape that I want. And then I'm going in with a little tool. I did wet this with alcohol to just avoid any chance of it sticking. And I'm poking some holes in the wing and kind of like elongating those holes. I really wanted that sort of natural, stretched, fibrous look from the inspiration picture. I wanted it to almost look like it was made out of liquid. And so I just started moving stuff around. I didn't really have that much rhyme or reason for this. So unfortunately, I can't really give you too much advice. Just add some gaps and then I do fully cure it. And I'm happy to say that this stuff cures super clear, no yellowness to it. If anything, there's almost like a cool toned blue tint, which is just really nice for a clear gel to not yellow. It does not cure rock solid though. This is a type that cures with a bit of like a softer texture, so it's never going to cure fully hard. I peel that up off the palette and I start my second wing. This one just a little bit smaller than the first, but still using the same technique of making the shape, adding some gaps, and then shaping it from there. While this product is much less sticky than others that I've worked with in the same sort of type, it was pretty hot in my filming studio at the moment. I had my computer going, my boyfriend had his going. So it was sticking a little bit, but it wasn't too much of an issue. I just, wet things with isopropyl alcohol and that was perfectly fine. Once both wings are finished, I am just kind of like placing them on the nail to see where I want them first. And then I go in with that IV Fix gel and I actually glue them down. I'm only really attaching them where the two wings connect. I wanted the ends to be free-flowing a little bit, and although they're flexible now, I will go in and top coat them. That will add to their sturdiness, but for now, I'm just attaching it at that connection point. And then I really wanted to emphasize that kind of like liquid effect, so I took some long pieces of the gel and I very like messily rolled them out to get these almost splash-like shapes, and then I cured them. This part did take quite a bit of trial and error. I tried actually attaching some gel to the nail first and then stretching it into place. It was not stiff enough to do that, and so I found rolling out these little logs and then curing them before attaching them worked the best. I think actually a silicone tool was the best option. So you want to apply uneven pressure, and that's how you get some of those like thicker areas and some of the thinner spots. This gel does cure with a tacky layer, which honestly was kind of nice because I was able to place the strands where I wanted them and they stayed because they were slightly sticky. So it is something, keep in mind that you will have to top coat eventually. But I was pretty happy with how everything was looking. I felt like it was really encapsulating the liquid vibe that I was going for. So I added a couple extra splashes, I guess is what you could call them. And I did end up gluing them in place once I was happy with the placement, giving everything a full cure. And now on to the last bit of 3D art. So I attempted to make that skeletal nail that I was really inspired by Diablo nails to make. I did not realize until after filming this first attempt that she has a tutorial on her page, and I thought that she had sculpted each sort of like vertebrae plus spine in one piece. So that was my first attempt, and it's horrendous. I hated it. It's so chunky looking. It did not end up looking like a spine at all. Here's what the final product was. And so I decided to actually just start over the next day. So here's me next day after having a rest and a break, and this time I took a page out of her book and I did sculpt each piece separately. So I went in and I laid down the vertebrae first, and then I added the ribs separately. I am much happier with the second attempt, but I honestly still feel like I could do this a bit smaller, a bit more refined and delicate looking, but that's okay. I mean, at some point I just had to say enough's enough and finish the design, learn from it, and move on. So each vertebra is kind of like a little tooth shape almost. So I'm using that brush here that I mentioned before. I think I got it from Zillabue. If anyone recognizes it, feel like it looks familiar, let me know. And then I'm also using my Cris tools for this part. The Crisania Neri sculpting tools are smaller versions of like the large silicone sculpting tools that you can usually get offline, and because of that I like using them for this more detailed work. One thing you might notice about this white clay is that it does yellow slightly when you cure it. You might be able to see that in some previous shots. However, don't freak out, because when it comes out of the lamp it will look quite yellow. That color dissipates once it, I don't know, like cools down, I guess. If you do have a low heat mode, I've noticed that that helps with the yellowing. But again, it does dissipate and becomes like a really nice neutral white. And now that I've finished with the skeleton, I'm just top coating everything to seal it in. But then I decided I liked the matte look of the bones, so I am going back in with that yogurt gel Korea matte top coat, and I'm just using a liner brush to try to hit just the bone sections. And that is the finished 3D art. I will show you a comparison of the before and after here. I do really like the second version much better, although there are still things that I feel like I could improve upon. I'm trying to get better at accepting some imperfections every once in a while for the sake of my mental health. So now we are moving right on along to the chrome details, including the Aprés Silk cover. So this whole package is really nicely done. I like kind of like the lined design. It comes with 8 colors and a base plus a topper. Now the base and topper I believe are gel, and then the rest are just a normal polish. I'm going to be focusing on silver screen. One of the instructions was to shake it up really well for at least 15 seconds. I just wanted to do some little highlights with this to test it out briefly. This is not going to be a comprehensive review, but I wanted to try this over some 3D designs because I think that's where I'll find the most use. So I'm just hitting the tips of the fins here, and I thought it created this really cool ombre effect. This polish is really thin and it's air dry, so what it will do is preserve a lot of the texture underneath, which is what I wanted. Chrome wouldn't really work here because of all those deep grooves in the design. Is it as shiny as chrome? Definitely not, but it still gives that metallic effect and preserves 3D texture underneath, which is how I think I'll probably be using this the most. I do think I ruined this nail by adding what I thought were going to be some nice like metallic streaks, and it just, honestly, I think I made it look too busy. I probably in the future would leave that out of this nail, but what's done is done. And the next product is also new to me. This is the Ice Gel Heavy Metal Painting Gel. I have been influenced. I see this stuff all over my Instagram all of the time. I picked it up from, I think it was Saracen online. Unfortunately, it is not available on Sweetie Nail Supply, but it's this really thick metallic painting gel. It looks sparkly now, but once you paint it on the nail and you let it sit for like a minute, It does create a super gorgeous, really smooth and reflective chrome finish. It is really stunning. And I like that it's thicker so that you can get really nice crisp shapes with it. Here I'm just doing some kind of like standard Y2K chrome designs. And then I did go in and add some more geometric lines, some straight lines based on that one nail that I showed you from Diablo's Nails on Instagram. I really like the patterns that she did on her set, so I tried to replicate some of it to varying degrees of success. But you can see just how shiny those chrome designs end up being once you let them sit and settle. And I went in and I just used that liner brush to add a few little extra dots before moving on to the pinky finger. With the pinky finger, I started with those more geometric shapes, and then I added the swirls around that. Now, I will say I totally forgot to kind of like let the gel sit and smooth out, so the pinky finger unfortunately is not quite as shiny and smooth as the other because, silly me, I painted on the shapes and then I like immediately stuck it into the lamp, so it didn't have time to smooth over. Definitely make sure that you're letting this smooth over before curing. And just to add a little bit more pizzazz to that thumbnail, I did go in with just some like chrome branches here across the top edge. To make this look organic, you almost want to move in purposefully jerky movements and paint more with the tip of the brush rather than the whole length. And then I did add this to the ends of the splashes on the middle finger as well, although I don't really think this is necessary looking back. I'm not sure how much it really adds to the effect. And last but not least, I pulled out my D-Gel painting gel. This is the black because I wanted to add some of those same like swirls and tribal patterns on that middle finger to cover up the chrome mess that I made. Honestly, this is very much a lesson in less is more for me. I probably would have left it just with the jelly black base and the glitter, maybe adding these black details, but I definitely would not do the chrome streaks again. I took so long crafting those wings that there was no way I was doing this nail over again. And then it's time to seal everything in with a top coat. I'm using my Mayo glass top. I like this one in particular because it is a thin consistency. And so if you have 3D art that you want to kind of like preserve the texture of, I think it's a really great option, especially for the mermaid tail here. I didn't want to take away from all of those really nice grooves that we made with the 3D mold. So I'm going over everything with a thin layer here of the Mayo glass top. And then halfway through, I decided I wanted just a couple caviar beads to cover up the connection point of the actual fins and the rest of the tail. I just added those when the gel was still wet and then cured it before moving on to topping everything else. And the nice thing about chrome paints is there's usually no fallout. I unfortunately painted right through a little bit of the chrome details that I had not cured. I was leaving it to sit. So if you notice any sort of fallout, that's my fault, not a fault of the product. But you do just get a really nice shiny finish without as much of the mess. And here I'm making sure to cover the entire wing, both the top and the underside. This will just protect, add strength, and also get rid of that tacky layer. And now we are ready for the piercings. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to try out my new dust collector. I already showed this off, but I am so impressed with how skinny it is. And it's supposedly just as strong as their other dust collectors. I've tried two others from Melody Susie, both their most recent pro version, the wired and the cordless, and honestly I do think that they are really good products for the price. Melody Susie is on the more affordable side. Here's a comparison between the dust collector and a bottle of polish. It's not even as tall as a bottle of polish, so it is really compact. I wish it were cordless, but I understand that to be cordless, it would have to take up more room. And you still get the 3 different power settings, which I appreciate. I do a little strength test here with a pretty thick card that I got from my croissant order. As you can see, it's not moving. Like, it is suction on there, and this one is pretty weighty. Even when I do like the little drop test from the side, it does suction into the machine. And so I would definitely say that this is just as powerful as their other models if you have one of their other models. I am not sponsored. They do send me stuff to try out for you all, and I honestly just think they're a really good budget brand for kind of like intermediary beginners. This is also a nail drill from them. So in order to affix the piercings, I am going to just drill some holes in my nails. I am first planning out which piercings I want on which nail, how I want them to be positioned. That way I can drill just one hole because there isn't really like a going back once you've drilled the hole. So this is just a really skinny diamond flame bit, and you want to go straight through the nail, apply really steady, even pressure. Use a brush to clean up any dust, wipe it away, and then I will actually take the drill and go back through the hole from the underside as well, just ensuring that both sides have a smooth finish around the edges. And then you just take your piercing and you unscrew it and you put it through the opening. Now I wanted my piercing to lie in a specific way, so I did go in and I added some more of that IV fix gel. Honestly, I should have used more than I did. I should have really like encapsulated that end. But I cured that and it just holds the piercing in the exact position that I wanted so you can really see what it is. I didn't really want it dangling, at least for that nail. For the ring finger, however, I did want just a couple dangling jump rings, and so I'm putting in 2 holes right next to each other, again drilling from both the front and the back of the nail. And on the back you might have to just drill away some of the extra material as well. And then I'm going in with my jewelry pliers and some silver jump rings, and I am just affixing those to the nail. And I do like how this turned out. I'm glad I decided to add a couple smaller piercings as well, just to tie this into the rest of the set. And last but not least, I am putting another hole into the pinky finger, this time on the other side. And I thought that maybe I could get the piercing to kind of lay in an angled manner if I drilled the hole in an angled manner. So that was my attempt here. I just made it a little bit too big. I do think this would have worked if I hadn't made it so wide. Because of the width, the piercing just kind of like sits like normal. But if I had done this a little bit more carefully, I do think it would have worked. But it's still cute as it is. And then I decided I wanted to add some more of that like punk aspect to the other nails, and I added a couple studs. If I were to do this design again, I probably would have added the studs before top coating. They are quite sharp, so I would recommend encapsulating them almost in some gel. As it was though, it was like 5 a.m. at this point. I needed to get the set done, so I just glued them down with that IV fix gel. For your purposes, if you use them, I would definitely recommend though an encapsulation, at least a nice thick top coat, to avoid them being too pointy and actually like accidentally hurting you. And believe it or not, that is the set complete. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of this style. I know it's not my typical, but I do really like the darker goth aesthetic along with Y2K sort of like cyberpunk themed looks, so I'd like to experiment more. I also have been seeing a lot of people doing the claw nails, including the Devil Wears press-ons, and I really want to give those a try at some point once I figure out exactly how I want to do them. But thank you all for being here today. I appreciate everybody who watched the last video on content creation. I know it was a little bit different than my normal stuff, but I figured I've been doing this for a while. I just want to share some of the things that I've learned, and ultimately, my goal with this channel is just to have a place to share my experiences. Hopefully other people can find that helpful. So yeah, check out the other videos on my channel for more nail tutorials, nail product reviews, and the occasional like content tech related vlog. I am now excited to be an affiliate with HyperX. I've also just uploaded my first video on my personal second channel. It's just a little gotcha vlog and unboxing. I'll have that linked below along with all of the products I used for this video and my discount codes. But just thank you to everyone for spending some time with me. I hope you are having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I will see you all next time. Bye!